Good evening and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true, and open debate they've been looking for. The Commercial Enterprises Bill passed by both the House of Assembly and Senate is widely contested by both the common man and the parliamentarians alike. Prime Minister Minnis says the bill is there to assist with the restoration of the Bahamian economy, while the opposition is promising to repeal the bill when it is government again. Everyone seems up in arms either defending this bill or damning it to hell. But a former Prime Minister has examined the bill and has recommended that some parts of it be amended to be more palatable and beneficial to the Bahamian people. Well, we're going to explore this bill for what it is worth, good, bad, or mendable. Tonight, we discuss the pros and cons of the Commercial Enterprises Bill with the Honourable Ellsworth Johnson, Minister of State for Legal Affairs, and Damien Gomez, a former Minister of State for Legal Affairs in the PLP administration. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this bill.
On the Record is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
Do you believe in light? Do you believe in love? Do you believe in precious moments? Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in tradition? Do you believe in family? Do you believe in home? I believe in the best Christmas ever. For everyone, everywhere. Believe in best. Alive.
Is your loved one celebrating a birthday? Or maybe they're commemorating a special occasion and you don't know what to get them? Why not get them something custom made from Executive Printers? At Executive Printers, you can create personalized calendars, greeting cards, and even playing cards just for them. A one-of-a-kind gift. They can even do personalized cups, mugs, keychains, coasters, and notepads. So come in and place an order today. We are located on Jerome Avenue South, or log on to epbahamas.com for more info.
I think it is wrong for us to sit here in our ivory towers, having experienced whatever career success we have or whatever, and say this is it. That if you're going to be successful in the Bahamas, fit into this box, otherwise go somewhere else.
Welcome back to On the Record. Our topic tonight, the pros and cons of the Commercial Enterprise Bill. My guest, Attorney and Minister of State for Legal Affairs, the Honourable Ellsworth Johnson, along with Attorney Damien Gomez. Gentlemen, welcome to On the Record. Now, we want to first start out by giving folks an idea of what the bill is all about. A lot of times I find that during the debate in Parliament, the essence sometimes is lost in the arguments. So I want to start out with you, Minister, by talking a little bit about why it was so important for this administration to bring this piece of legislation within your first year in office, and what fundamentally is this bill supposed to do?
Very good. Critically, first, thank you for having me. Compliments to the season to you and your watching and listening audience. It was critical at this stage of the Minnis administration to bring this legislation for the purpose of creating, as a part of our fundamental strategy, to create enterprise and industry in the Bahamas that favors the development of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and its citizenry. The bill, to my mind, is the quintessential expression of Bahamianization. When we came to governance, we met a country where there was both local and international mistrust in investment in the Bahamas. So we've moved quickly to lay a number of bills. One chief among them is the Integrity Commission Bill that we will be debating. And that bill will deal with code of conduct for persons proceeds of crime legislation we've laid before Parliament, which will also look at unexplained wealth, which will go back to the government if a senior public official or a government official cannot explain as to where it comes from. It does not excuse possible prosecution for it. And so in creating both, because the IMF, the IDB, Chamber of Commerce, and a number of the other international and local organizations express their dismay in terms of the ease of doing business, but the transparency of doing business in the Bahamas. So we're doing that. A part of it is to jumpstart the economy. The Integrity Commission Bill allows for both Bahamians, non-Bahamians, or a partnership between Bahamians and persons of foreign origin to come together to create industry and enterprise in niche areas that are not existent, or if they are existent, they're existent at a minimal level in the Bahamas. So it creates a board. There's an application process where you must provide a meticulous plan of the nature, extent, and philosophy of the business, so that you can get an idea of that. The necessity for persons who will work in the business, and why I say it's the quintessential expression of the Bahamianization process is because it says for those work permits that the Immigration Department will then give to those businesses, and it could be a Bahamian too. You must train persons for those positions for which the work permits are being given. Now, this is nothing new. When prior to majority rule, we had our difficulties in terms of equality, whether it be for healthcare, economics, or whatever have you. After majority rule, Sir Lyndon, the nation's father, went about encouraging both local investors, but more so, and even the foreign persons who were here, that the Bahamas was the place to do business. As a result of those efforts, those early efforts, we developed a tourism industry second to none. We developed financial services. A lot of persons came and we were able to create that. That's as a result of direct foreign investment. A part of this, we've gone around, we're traveling around the world and saying to Bahamians who are away that the Bahamas is a place for you to reinvest in. So what you will see very shortly, we're in intense discussions with the central bank in terms of easing or regulating the whole process of exchange controls, where Bahamians, you can go to Miami right now and decide that you want to open a bank account. Why can't you do that here? A lot of persons have expressed some difficulties with that. And so the process is to create an environment as first world countries are doing. You go to any international conference, business conference, you will find that if it's not Dubai, Dubai is an excellent example. Come and you can do work. We're going to be looking at things that we once ruled. We had captive insurance. The Bahamas was the place for it. We no longer have it. And so it's not, and the process for the application is also meticulous. Because
so let me ask this, and this is some of the criticisms that I have read. People have said that there was not enough consultation and not enough partner, or people have said that they've identified some flaws to the bill. Yes. And it seems that there was not a lot of widespread consultation.
This is how governance works. And I always, not the best illustration, but I always use the Democrats and the Republicans, but the role of civil society and what they do in terms of assisting and checking good governance. Now, what we have done, and I laid the bill, I led off debate on the bill. And when the bills were laid, we were saying to persons, you can get a free copy, and this is a good way for persons to understand. You can go to Parliament and get a free copy. You can also go online and get a free copy. The bills were sent to Organization for Good Governance. they took a copy of the bill. They sent back their recommendations. Persons in the private sector, they took a copy. They sent back their recommendations. And so that was done. Now, I will not sit here and tell you that the government probably should not do a better job in terms of its public relations, right? A part of engaging civil society's members of parliament must also do their due diligence in their community to introduce these bills, educate on these bills. I've just recently had something on land reform that's near and dear to my heart, introducing the bills that will soon be discussed to bring into law, asking the questions whether or not they go that far. But despite the fact that the bills were laid, the amendments were laid, I heard some persons, even in the media, who appear to not have read the bills. I know that my learned senior is here. The bills were laid. They were laid when the opposition were in Parliament. And then they came on the date and said that they need more time to consider the bills. The bills, I think, were laid for almost a month. One of the things this government encourages is advice and objective criticisms. As a result of what was done, they were taken on, amendments were made, and considered advice. We take that on board. But what a government has to do, and the mandate that the people have given to us, is that of governing this country. And we must do it in a way that, in a reasonable way, that would take this country from third world to first world. Even the Right Honorable Hubert Ingram, he made certain comments about it.
We'll get to that a little later on the show, bring it up. Mr. Gomez, the opposition has had an issue with this bill, it seems from day one. I want to get you in on the discussion and really to speak some of the fundamental issues.
What we perceive from the bill is that the government simply does not have a plan in relation to the economy. Secondly, they have not engaged in what are traditional means of developing policy. There is no reference in any of the debates to any studies, reports that have been done on behalf of the government to inform the government as to why it should do X or Y. And at the end of the day, we have the anecdotes of individual proponents of the bill, but no official study being presented to the public justifying the contents of the bill. And we say that in the context of our experience previously in government, as well as our knowledge of economic developments in this region. For instance, Panama grew its GDP from $8 billion in 2007 to $56 billion this year. It's expanded the canal. Much of the traffic that goes through the canal passes through the Bahamas. We would have expected by now to have some discussion as to how we are going to go about in that sector of the economy, building the capacity to add value to that traffic for the purposes of job creation and wealth creation in the Bahamas. Nothing at all is said about that. In Santo Domingo, they have increased their tourism traffic from Europe phenomenally. We have not yet had a discussion as to how the southeastern Bahamas can best be positioned to benefit from this huge opportunity that would enable us in an area that has almost depopulated over the last 20 years.
What then would be the opposition's position in trying to alleviate some of the issues that this bill is attempting?
This bill seems to focus primarily on immigration issues. And we say simply, at present, if a foreigner comes in with a job prospect at the border, under the present legislation that exists, not the bill, an immigration officer can grant a temporary work permit. So we ask the question, what is the panic about work permits? When we were in office and we did a study, well over 90% of applications for work permits are granted. That does not speak to a regime that is restrictive at all. Yet, this is what we are presenting to the public, and it is really a falsehood. Now, the Immigration Department has resource problems. We have recently increased the workforce there by some 200 officers. The then minister had indicated that that number needed to be even greater. And we do have immigration issues outside of the work permit regime that need to be addressed.
That's a whole other discussion.
But that's a discussion in itself. But what we're saying is this bill doesn't really focus on the increasing of business. And we as yet have not been told as a public how many businesses are anticipated to be created through this particular medium.
Mr. Johnson, two things that he spoke to: no sort of study or
no plan.
Or no plan, and then also it seems to be focusing primarily on immigration, which seems to be causing a lot of angst with a lot of people who are opposed to the bill.
Yes. When I first spoke, I spoke to the disposition in which we found the Bahamas. And Mike Lanatini spoke to reports. You can Google the IDB right now, and you can check on persons who the IDB has suggested business should never be done with, certain contractors. The fact is that the reputation of this country has been tarnished. On coming into office, we undertook to do an audit of the public service and almost every contracts. We've laid certain things before Parliament. I haven't heard very much criticism in terms of what we've laid and the decisions that we've been taking to restore the integrity of this country, both locally and internationally. That is the plan. Nobody's going to come to do business somewhere where there's a 10 to 20% requirement by our leaders or by persons who work in the higher echelon of the public service. We have taken the Chamber of Commerce, and international reports have suggested that the public service that is bloated. So we are assessing it for its efficiency and the lack thereof. My Prime Minister has taken the initiative to look at that for the first in the history. Spoke about jobs being created in immigration. There's no denying the fact that thousands of jobs were created. Going into the Attorney General's office, we met persons there who were not even undocumented in a sanctum of that office, in the judiciary. So yes, we want to create jobs, but the level of transparency and accountability has to be restored for persons to come. We have done that. Nobody questions the nature of the bills that we bring. When we look at procurement, how contracts are given out, we do have a plan, and we're bringing that plan, and nobody's going to stop that plan. Sorry, sir.
No, go ahead. I want you to wrap up because you've got to go to a break.
Very good.
Yeah.
In terms of the bill, as I indicated when I first started, there is a plan in terms of the Commercial Enterprise Act, which is not of recent vintage. I said what Sir Lyndon did. It was designed to encourage persons to come to the Bahamas. Even the Progressive Liberal Party went about with Bahama, trying to close the deal, sending some of the most senior members to bring those persons here. What we have to do, and that is what that bill attempts to do, not to bring businesses to be in competition with Bahamians, but specialized areas. There's no denial, captive insurance, that we would love to have it here. There's no denial of that. Ms. Mylanacini spoke about where we are positioned and South America. Well, isn't there something about the maritime industry in the schedule? And how do we encourage that? That is what we're about. We're creating a Bahamas where we can self-determine and create economic activity for the persons here.
Yeah, we're going to have to take a break in the show. We'll continue with these points when we come back. Stay with us. We are on the record. More right after this break.
This segment is sponsored by Percy's Island Game.
Honey, did you call the wrecker? I'm here on the side of the road. I can't believe this car is broken down again. Okay, all right, later.
It's beginning to look a lot like Cash Money. With the game, you know, Island Game is giving away cash to brighten up your day, and the golden ticket that will make you save. It's beginning to look like the best Cash Money ever when you play with us.
Deposit $20 on your Island Game account and be one of 60 cash prize winners, or maybe, just maybe, get a golden ticket for a chance to win a new car, trips around the world, or other great prizes. But only if you play at Percy's The Island Game.
Do you believe in light? Do you believe in love? Do you believe in precious moments? Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in tradition? I believe in the best Christmas ever. For everyone. Everywhere. Believe in best. Alive.
At the time he made those comments, I stopped him dead in his tracks because what he's saying is actually nonsense. The F&M has to live by their own history, and they have to accept the history of the country. And what we have is a philosophical difference of opinion on how work permits ought to be granted in this country. We're saying that this bill is taking us back to the pre-1967 period when all may come by giving work permits automatically. And the irony of the situation is that this is being driven by someone who is the son of the last premier of the UBP. That's all we did, is we pointed out the irony of that situation.
Welcome back to On the Record. Tonight we're discussing the pros and cons of the Commercial Enterprises Bill. My guests, the Honourable Ellsworth Johnson and Damien Gomez. We would have come out of the break with a comment there from Opposition Senator Fred Mitchell, speaking to one of the main issues the opposition and others would have with this bill, and it really speaks to immigration. And that really brought up an entire other discussion. The government would have then accused the opposition and members, etc., of being xenophobic and race baiting in some instances. Do you accept that this is where the discussion is going?
No, I don't. And this is why I began by saying that one of the problems has been that the government has not referred to any report that it has commissioned to be created to justify what they have put in the bill, so that you end up with the perception that something else is driving this other than public policy. And it is, if you look at how governments have in the past behaved when they were departing from an area of public policy that is actually consensually driven, because up until this moment, the Free National Movement and the Progressive Liberal Party have had the same immigration position. Bahamianization has been almost an ideological common point for political discussion in this country. Now they are moving the signposts for themselves. And in doing so, one would have expected them to justify that departure from a traditional position held by both sides, and they haven't done so. There is no IDB report that actually condescends to discuss what is in this bill. There are none. What my friend is speaking to is a report on the ease of doing business. And yes, there are adverse comments about us. And it's not a political adverse comment. It is a comment across the board. And as to our inability to improve on that particular aspect of international investment. What is important to note is that Bahamian business people complain most bitterly because while we have been doing things for foreigners, we have not provided a business investment friendly climate for locals. And that is where I thought the new administration would have been busy attempting to make a name for itself. Instead, the amendment to the bill that enables Bahamians to access the certificate that is provided for in the bill came as an afterthought after the criticism that Bahamians need not apply. And that therein lies the quote-unquote xenophobia. What we are saying is, look, we live here, and we ought to be the primary focus of any government policy that is for the benefit of the country. Because there's no point. There's no point.
Exclusion of Bahamian?
Absolutely not. And that's why I started by saying that this bill and provisions within this bill is or are the quintessential expression of the Bahamianization process. If one gets a work permit, and it doesn't oust the jurisdiction of the Immigration Department, if one gets a work permit, you have to show in your plan specifically how you will train Bahamians to be able to do that job. Now, we started off with a clip from the Honorable Mr. Fred Mitchell. Let's call a spade a spade. He spoke about pre-1967 types of investment. But what was also placed in there was Mr. Brent Simonet and his father.
You call it the Brent Bill.
Yes, and everything that occurred prior to that. What we have to be mature enough in this country to do, a country that invites more than 6 million people a year, about 3 million are Caucasians, and I've seen someone of a Caucasian race cringe at certain things. We have to have a rational and reasonable debate on race and stop using it as a divisive tool to steer arguments in the way that we want them to go. And I want to say that, and for your consideration and the consideration of the public, because I know where it's going. The reality is that the bill seeks to bring, and no, I want to deal with something that my learned senior made mention of. The IDB and the IMF did not, there's no research specifically on this bill, but the research encapsulates this bill because it speaks about the transparency, contracts, the invitation of international resource into the Bahamas and how it's dealt with specifically and how we have to deal with it. And so that's why I spoke to certain bills. The Integrity Commission bill.
This bill, though, specifically speaks to the process of the granting of the work
permits.
And I think it's a 14-day period.
Yes,
right?
listen.
Is that, my question though, is that enough time to be able to vet and
please allow me, please allow me. In the interest of the ease of doing business, I went to a conference where someone asked me, what are you guys doing with IPs? You take so long to do things. I heard persons complaining about the Royal Bank. In the next 10 years, you would not have banks. I have a family member who does a banking online. We've just called a meeting of the different heads of the different departments because as we move to increase information technology in the Bahamas, you have to be able to do things in a contemporary way and contemporary to how the world is doing it. And so a license should not take you 2 months.
And I agree
a work permit, under the Commercial Enterprises Act, you have to provide a comprehensive plan which outlines what you're going to do. You should not have silos. One of the things that the Progressive Liberal Party did, and there's a lady that I admire, Mrs. Allison Gibson, she sought to break down the silos by bringing different entities together so that when something comes in, you're working to have things done so it could be done quickly. We're losing business as a result of our inability to be efficient and timely in certain things.
I would agree that we need to do a lot to improve the ease of doing business in Bahamas. That is a common position politically.
Held by many, yes.
No, but the question is, does this bill achieve that? And I say no. The bill, first of all, relies on the Bahamas Investment Board, which is an existing institution. There are no regulations as to attached to this bill as to how these applications are to be processed. There are no standards statutorily defined as to what is acceptable in terms of the number of persons per work permit that you issue in terms of training. So all of that is left in the nebula of some...
Up to the discretion.
And it's in a discretion. But that's precisely what the international institutions are complaining about. They're saying that we don't know, when we look at your legislation, what criteria you are espousing for the grant of or refusal of a particular application. This is causing consternation because business people like to have a level of certainty. And when you look at the bill, that is precisely what is absent. So we don't know how many trainees are associated with each work permit. We don't know whether, if a work permit is granted in a particular area, there's going to be a relaxation of the requirement for training. We don't know how much money is associated with the investment to justify to do this. So you start off with a very low threshold of $250,000.
Well, I was going to say that is a bone of contention as well.
But I'm saying you start off with that.
Criticized as being too low.
But bear with me. I'm looking at this through the lens of someone who witnessed the construction industry almost be hammered to its knees during the building phase of Bahama, principally because we foolishly allowed pretty much the foreign entity, a Chinese company, to bring in 5,000 workers at a time. And with that in mind, Bahamians are bound to be skittish, bound to be suspicious about persons coming in ostensibly to develop the Bahamas, but they bring with them a number of work permit holders so that whatever, particularly if you're starting at $250,000, that's a small business.
It doesn't require a lot of manpower.
It doesn't require a lot of manpower. It may go belly up within the 3-year period that you have stipulated, and I say that because most small businesses fail. So
3 years is your
here it is, you're doing something which we may not get the benefit of at all.
He's made some very valid points.
No,
you don't?
I don't agree. I think the bill, I know that the bill is specific. It speaks to the persons who may apply or to come in under the Commercial Enterprises Bill. And some of these things are occurring today. When you look at a place like Sandals, a part of the agreement that they have with Sandals, it allowed you to bring in some of your senior persons to establish the business. That happens. So it happens.
Particularly if it's a particular brand or
yes,
something.
And the work permits are being granted by both administration, right? The whole issue with the work permit is, and as I said before, it does not oust the jurisdiction of the Immigration Department to do its due diligence to ensure that these persons who are coming in are fit and proper persons, right? And so, in terms of what the bill intends to do, is to create enterprise in the Bahamas.
But do you accept, though, that $250,000 threshold?
The fact that you are using Sandals as your example actually is supporting what I'm saying. Sandals invested millions of dollars in the Bahamas. They bought 2 hotels.
I don't agree. I don't agree. Because I'll say why I don't agree.
But hold
even
on,
though the threshold is at $250,000, it doesn't prevent somebody from coming in. Let's say, as I said, for captive insurance or arbitrage to come and make these investments. It doesn't prevent them.
I wanted you to finish your point, sir.
But the point that I'm making is that Sandoz spent huge amounts of money, and they were not merely bringing in people. Bahamians had the opportunity and have the opportunity to work at their brand hotels throughout the Caribbean. So that
and be trained.
And be trained. So there was, that's a completely different kettle of fish.
I don't agree.
To someone who is coming in and spending $250,000, which I dare say won't even buy him an apartment.
I don't agree. The bill specifically speaks that a business can kind of be set up. Who, in terms, will get a work permit. You must train persons for the exact same work permit. You know, I know you spoke about the whole issue of xenophobia, and I think that is a part of it in terms of whether or not there's no issue of persons coming to take Bahamian jobs that are currently existent. It's creating a new area for niche businesses to come into the Bahamas and to set up their work. And that's what the bill does. Nothing simple. There's the whole issue of Mr. Brent Simmons' father being introduced, what that entails by that history. Pre-1967, and when I said that Sir Lyndon himself went to those same persons and did business with them. As a matter of fact, those families in the Bahamas are still doing businesses and contributing to the welfare of this country.
They were the primary beneficiaries of the PLP.
Pardon me?
They were the primary beneficiaries of the PLP Bahamianization
and significantly assisted and supported the PLP. They didn't leave, they stayed.
I'm just so curious as to what, as you would have said earlier, Mr. Gomez, that up to this point there had been, as you put it, agreement between the two parties on the immigration policy.
So if you're going to depart from it, wouldn't you be pointing to some report that you have commissioned so that we know that it is transparent? It is that is how transparency is.
Do you accept that is what the issue is?
I do not accept that. The Progressive Liberal Party has gone around the world trying to invite persons, foreign nationals, to come to the Bahamas, and that cannot be denied, to set up businesses. They've given them special incentives to come in and set up businesses, to the point where we had a certain person even took property, and you had to go to court to get it back. And there were certain things as to whether or not he got an unfair advantage. So both parties, all governments around the world, try their best to bring commerce to their country. This is what the bill does. The bill identifies that there may be persons who may be coming to the Bahamas, and how do we assist them? The bill allows a Bahamian, let's say a Bahamian who sets up a business with the requirement for no capital. It allows that Bahamian to make an approach and says, I want to start X, I want to start Y, this is the expert that I need to bring in, but this is how this person will then train a Bahamian. What we have done systematically over the years, is that both administrations, and to the extent that the FNM haven't done that, I must apologize. Both administrations have not seen to it that persons coming in on work permit, that they train Bahamians, that they develop capacity in the Bahamas.
Yes, that is true.
All this bill does is invites you and says and codifies it. So you could even, a union could even sue in court and say, if you don't do this, you have it in writing now. This is what can happen. And persons can view it.
But the reality is this. One would have expected the bill to actually provide for the audit of these activities to ensure that there is a real consequence for not having Bahamians trained. We don't do that in this bill.
Please, listen to me.
Please,
I have to respond to that.
Refer to the clause in the
legislation. Every government is taken to act reasonably and fairly. It sets up a board. If that board doesn't activate, can't you take a judicial review application? Can't there be regulations to this bill? Those things are there. Those are simple things that the
regulations are not provided for.
What we have to do is there has to be some degree of discretion. Because if somebody comes in and decides to set up a call center, that may not require that much. So you're saying that let us know if someone is setting up a bill, we want to know the ratio of Bahamians. What we know is only for the owners and persons with special expertise that will come in. If someone decides to come in and set up a small business, right, They may not need that much. So if you said, I want a ratio of, let's say, 50% Bahamians, 50% would make sense. If someone decides to come and set up one of their conglomerates decide to come and set one of their offices here, that requires, let's say, 1,000 persons, or to assemble vehicles. You have to have some flexibility in the legislation.
I'll give you the answer before we go to the break, sir.
But that still requires someone to audit the activities of both the board and the foreign investor to ensure that the interests of Bahamian workers remains protected. And that's simple. It's a simple provision that could have been put into the bill had the bill been properly circulated for comment.
It was properly circulated.
No,
it does not oust the jurisdiction of the Immigration Department.
Gentlemen,
and it could be supervised by the court by way of judicial review.
We are at the halfway point of our show. Tonight we are discussing the pros and cons of the Commercial Enterprise Bill. My guest, Attorney and Minister for State Legal Affairs, the Honourable Ellsworth Johnson, along with Attorney Damien Gomez. When we return, we're going to continue our discussion. Interestingly, the PLP has said that when they return to office, they will repeal. I want to discuss that and whether we want to discuss that, and certainly is that something they would pursue. Stay with us. We are back with more On the Record on the other side of this break.
Do you believe in light? Do you believe in love? Do you believe in precious moments? Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in tradition? I believe in the best Christmas ever. For everyone. Everywhere. Believe in best. Alive.
Did you call the wrecker? I'm here on the side of the road. I can't believe this car is broken down again. Okay, all right, later.
It's beginning to look a lot like Cashmas with the king, you know. Island Game is giving away cash to brighten up your day, and the golden ticket that will make you safe. It's beginning to look like the best Cashmas ever when you play with us.
Deposit $20 on your Island Game account and be one of 60 cash prize winners. Or maybe, just maybe, get a golden ticket for a chance to win a new car, trips around the world, or other great prizes. But only if you play at Percy's The Island Game.
Debate in social circles has, in my view, been reduced to an exercise in race baiting, the stirring up of xenophobic and irrational fears, and scaremongering by some elements in the opposition. Snide comments such as the labeling of the bill as Brent's bill, being an obvious reference to the Minister of Immigration and former Deputy Prime Minister Brent Simonet, are erroneous, inaccurate, harmful, and redolent of vicious race baiting.
Welcome back to On the Record. Our topic tonight, the pros and cons of the Commercial Enterprises Bill. We continue our discussion with my guests in studio. We would have heard there the Attorney General in the Senate speaking to this bill and speaking to what some of the comments that the opposition has made. One of the things that the leader of the opposition has said that when he becomes Prime Minister, he will instantly repeal the bill. That too has been met with a lot of criticism, and others have said that that is not the right message to be sending, particularly to potential investors.
But we are saying to them openly, we are so opposed to it that if you do invest, you are forewarned that should we win, it will be repealed. So we are in fact enabling them to avoid problems if that's what they foreshadow.
Do you not fear that it may, though, detract some foreign investors from coming?
If they are coming with the view that they can abuse the Bahamian workforce, then we say we don't need them. We are not suggesting that there is an immigration problem in the Bahamas. Quite the contrary. What we are saying is that really and truly this bill...
You're suggesting there is not an immigration?
We are saying that there is not an immigration department problem. It may be an efficiency issue that can be easily dealt with. But the legislation as it is now enables the immigration department to perform its statutory function. And interposing in that statutory matrix these variables for certain businesses complicates and creates a two-tier system, one for this particular group of people who are coming in to do business, and the other for the rest of us. That cannot be either helpful, nor can it be described as transparent.
Do you accept that there are issues with the ease of doing business? My
I
question
do, but I'm saying is this.
Why were measures not put in place under the PLP to address some of these issues?
When you apply to the Bahamas Investment Authority, as is commonplace as a foreign investor to do, all of these issues of work permits, etc., are carefully ironed out in the discussions with the investors. And no one, as far as I am aware, has complained that it took too long for them to reach an agreement on immigration issues. They would have complained.
I beg to differ with that. I'm sorry. I beg to even differ with that.
No, but I'm telling you, by and large, investors have complained about the length of doing the environmental impact studies and the economic impact studies and having those approved. Because really and truly, the immigration issue is a fairly simple, quick fix. Most of the delays have been at the stage of environmental impact studies.
I had some personal issues. Working the BTC
yes.
During the period on the cable and wireless, I would have known of some specific issues relative to work permits, etc. But I mean, that's from my own experience.
As I said, you made mention of Mr. Davis and his commentary on when he becomes Prime Minister. All I would say is that hope, like faith, springs eternal. In terms of the work permits, we are speaking in terms of our analysis of the public sector, we are speaking to certain other folk. We've interacted with members of the immigration department who have identified certain issues that could make the process much more efficient. We are now signing to join the Caribbean Union of Technology, and I hope I got it right, in terms of how do we introduce ICTs into governance to make the ease of this business doing much better. To say that there is no, or as was suggested, that there's no difficulty in terms of the granting of work permits or the process or the longevity in which it takes. I'm quite certain that my good friend, my learned senior, Mr. Fred Smith, can list any number of situations. And even international investors, none of us could deny who sit here, that they have left the Bahamas because of the way we do business, right? Because of the time taken to give work permits. You know, when you go to immigration now, there's a Haitian line. You go to this line. This is your department. Our Constitution says you aren't to take cognizance of origin, race, or whatever have you. That comes down to in our subsidiary legislation and the way that we do business. And so we must acknowledge, if we're going to fix the Bahamas, if we're going to take it to first world, right, that there are certain inalienable problems that we have. And the PLP and the FNM must take responsibility for them and not deny them, because they're elephants in the room. This bill, I will draw back to the bill in terms of Bahamians being disadvantaged. It's being written. The PLP didn't take the initiative to write this and to say, if you come into the Bahamas, we spoke about it, Bahamianization, that if you come into the Bahamas and I give Mr. Jerome Sawyer a work permit, there must be a meticulous plan, right? It says a meticulous plan is how you are to introduce him to this new idea or way of thinking or new business, so that at the end of the day, he is as competent as he ought to be. Where we have fallen down a lot of times, even though it was not in writing, is in the enforcement. So I hear everybody talking about Bahamianization and patriotism, but we must actualize that in what we do.
My question, though, is who then will be the guardians of all of this?
I'll tell you who will be the guy. I'll tell you who will be the guy.
Be able to do due diligence.
The bill sets up a board. The bill speaks to the minister, as in other areas, who will be responsible for certain things. Right now, we're working assiduously on the infrastructure for the Freedom of Information Act. So that you can access these things. The bill is in writing. That makes it justiciable. A union can take it to court. It can be used as a part of a bargaining agreement. Yes, you came in. Yes, you brought Mr. Jerome Sawyer. But 3 years in, 4 years in, nothing is being done. We have people in this country who've been here for 19 years on work permits.
I know. I have not trained anyone.
Listen, just allow me. I was president of the bar. A master's in corporate and commercial law. It was claimed that I didn't have the skills to do certain work. Who was enforcing that to ensure that myself, and we cannot deny that there's significant brain drain. There are hundreds of Bahamians who are training and people are sending their children away with the message that they should not come back. We have to create the environment where they can come. Even if they apply for a work permit, they're not treated difficultly. And you know something, when I spoke about race, not just white and black, you know. Mr. Gomez is a little lighter than me. Sometimes we favor that goes that way. So and so these are the things we have to consider. There's nothing untoward about this bill. I think what is being introduced, when you talk about pre-1967, we know that it strikes a chord. It strikes a chord because there are still open wounds. We speak about Mr. Brent Simmons' father, and then we say, when we said we're going to look at the immigration department, my prime minister is being criticized for saying to persons, if you're not legalized, leave. We have a right to protect our borders. Very shortly, I'm not preempting him, you will find that the fines for harboring will go up. You will find that we will deal with shanty towns. So these are the things that we have to deal with, but we have to be humane, as my prime minister says, but we also have to be realistic that we live in a global village. And it's not wrong for us, as the PLP and the FNM has done, as I said earlier, with tourism, financial services, because of our actions and attitudes, persons have left, to create the environment to encourage Bahamians and international persons to do business here.
I know you want to get ahead.
No, but what I'm saying is this. I'm delighted that the government is going to be doing some of the things that my learned friend has said. But while you are tightening the noose around persons who harbor illegal aliens and who facilitate them,
I'm just making a reference.
Not just the people who hiring them to work in the yard too now. But you know, you got big companies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
but I'm saying,
absolutely. I made that statement in terms of treatment of immigration.
I'm delighted to hear that. But what I'm saying is that while you are doing that, you are also in this bill creating a level of statutory confusion, because under this bill, a person could come in, they have 30 days within which to make their formal application for a work permit. Now, what the immigration officer who is charged with the responsibility of enforcing the Immigration Act then is faced with is he comes across someone who's working, and he doesn't know how to treat that particular person. That is what I'm talking about when I say that the statutory provision needs to be tightened up, because it creates an area of doubt for the person who is required as part of his job to enforce the law.
Allow me to demystify it, please.
But I'm not, for me, it is for them.
Please, for the viewing public. When you make this application with your meticulous plan, if you go to, I can't recall the page of the bill, there are certain requirements, financial transaction reporting requirements to ensure that they are fit and proper persons. You need a police report, your identification, your company. There are so many different things that you need that will be a part of this, and the acid test will be done. Now, if we're breaking down silos for the ease of doing business, you produce this plan. What prevents one ministry, like my Prime Minister called a group in the other day, what prevents one ministry from sending that? If you're using information technology, creating a computer system where persons can access it for certain information, we have, in so doing, you create an environment that is business friendly. So when the immigration officer X comes in, he's already provided his meticulous business plan. There's a certain requirement for him to provide who he is, a police report, so Interpol can do its work, and all these inquiries are being done. You're working closely with the police. By the time as they get here, in accordance with our international obligation for OECD and common reporting standards, we've taken care of that. That is being taken. Immigration could also be a part of that. Just allow me. We have a serious problem now where persons can't. Someone is taken into the detention center. Shouldn't the immigration department with limited access be able to access a birth certificate just from a desk?
But that is the point that
if we're gonna, that's where we're working.
Okay, gentlemen,
if we're gonna do business, and in Hong Kong or in Singapore it can be done in a week, why can't we? Why can't we, as some of the most brilliant persons on the earth, and this is just an illustration, cut it down to 6 days?
What I'm saying, I need to respond to this, is this. It is going to take some time before this technological development is actually implemented. In the meantime, this bill will have become law.
We are on the way.
Gentlemen.
And that is the problem.
We have one more segment to go. Stay with us. We are on the record. More right after this.
Get in the game with NFL Sunday Ticket from Rev TV. You'll get every game every Sunday afternoon in crystal clear HD. That's over 220 football games for the entire regular season. Plus, NFL Sunday Ticket gives you that died and woke up in football heaven experience when you include NFL Red Zone, a channel dedicated to every scoring play from every game and all your fantasy football teams. Get in the game with NFL Sunday Ticket. Call 601-8992 today.
It's same as if we know that something has to be done, but the same as if we're trying to do a fire sale and cheapening what the Bahamian is all about with the Bahamian experience.
Welcome back. Our final segment of this episode. Tonight, our topic is the pros and cons of the Commercial Enterprises Bill. My guest tonight, the Honorable Ellsworth Johnson, along with attorney Damien Gomez. You see even concerns coming from segments of the trade unions, either the BCPRU president speaking to that, making a very valid point. He, as is the case with others, concerned, as he said, about cheapening
the brand.
The brand. Yeah, the brand. We can use that. Mr. Gomez, I'll let you start off.
I think that really speaks to the $250,000 threshold. And I must say, I don't normally agree publicly with Mr. Hubert Ingram, but he must be seen to have a point. I mean, you know, for minimal investment, you suddenly have access to a benefit that you would ordinarily not even be asking for normally. And that's the first point. The second point, and I wanted to go back to something that my friend said, and that is that you can go to court. I don't think that that is a comforting thought for trade unionists, because right now, to get a trial date on a matter that is at the summons for direction stage in the Supreme Court, you're talking about 2020. And we're in 2017 going in 2018. So that is not something that any Bahamian relishes. And we would really prefer not to have to go to court to have our rights in this regard protected. And one of the things that we can do to minimize that exposure is to have sufficiently clear provisions that enable an audit to be done of the activity, the hiring and training activities of the beneficiaries of these certificates. And that really is the nub of the criticism of the bill.
Mr. Johnson, how much or how open to consistent amendments to this will the government be? I mean, obviously there are some things that are causing some concern. How much will this be amended? Will provisions be put into the law as time goes on to deal with concerns or issues that arise or even deficiencies?
Yes. There's always, that's not new. You could always amend a bill, even after coming into law. That's been done over and over again. In terms of cheapening the product, to comment what the trade union leader made mention of, there's nothing in this bill that ousts the unions from operating within the sector, correct? There's been, I've heard of what Mr. Ingram has said, and I've said publicly that I'm not going to either comment on what he says to say whether it is right or wrong. Persons have made their commentary on it, and that may be something that the government may want to consider, When my learned senior ended his comment just now, he's saying, it appears to me that the entirety of the bill, there are certain things that are good about the bill. When you hear certain individuals in the community speak about the bill, they identify certain things, but they don't say, throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think sometimes, and I'm speaking to the union leader, in politics, we just can't object just to be seen to be doing something. I've laid the plain intention of the bill. I've said that the bill will provide for persons coming in to get a work permit. They must train for that exact same work permit. I do not deny that there are circumstances in the Bahamas that exist where those who preach Bahamianization fell down. They encouraged it in certain respects. When I spoke to the court, it is just one aspect of how you will do business. Someone coming in, when you submit your plan, it still allows the government to create with that entity heads of agreements, how you will deal, and these things aren't foreign to creating business in the Bahamas. You can do that. And so you present a plan, no, we want this, we want that, this is how. Experts will be dealing with this. The Immigration Department, their jurisdiction will not be ousted.
The Immigration Department, are they being properly trained, etc., to be able to handle these kinds of requests and approvals?
Of course. What we're doing now, the former government brought in extra personnel. We are now, as I told you, we're signing on to the Caribbean, I spoke with information technology. That has to be properly introduced to government. A part of it now is getting into the immigration system. Separate and aside from work permits, not just for foreign persons coming in. You have persons who have been here for years without work permits, who've applied for work permits, sometimes 3 years they don't get it. One of the things that we cannot deny being honest, that there's a level of corruption in our system. How does someone apply today? An ex was waiting for 4 or 5 years, and we have hard workers, and theirs go through.
Yeah.
There's the identification of these issues in the system that we have to work with, right? And we're dealing with that. you're going to see some serious changes made in immigration very shortly. We're introducing information technology in there. Training is ongoing. But the thing about it is when you deal with the personnel in immigration, they recognize sometimes certain of the things or issues or lack of resources they have that can cause things to move more smoothly. Listen, as hard as this is to say, I must say it. And sometimes we prevent it. We had where somebody came in, an international investor, get back on the plane. He could have picked up all of his stuff and just left. Don't come in and look like us, black. And that's why I said we need a national debate on this. And
I don't have a problem
no,
with that.
No,
I don't accept that Brad Sumner is right. But
no, I'm not going. Please. Don't distort it.
That.
We're talking about the efficiencies and lack thereof. Yeah. And I'm identifying certain issues that create certain deficiencies.
There's a cause and effect.
There are persons who are saying to us, we would love to invest in the Bahamas. There are second home owners. We have friends who, this is being done by the, and my learned senior understands that. We have friends who want to come. But you see this here, you have to be able to deal with it. Because if, right just away in Cayman Islands, they can have it done, bang, bang, bang. They're going to go there. This is business.
It will go way easier. Mr. Gomez, I want to, as we begin to wrap up, I want to speak to something that would have appeared in the press. I can't exactly attribute it to the correct person, but it was said previously that in the past, while in opposition, the PLP has said that it would repeal several pieces of legislation brought forward by the FNM government at the time, one being Sunday shopping and a few others. I can't remember who made the comment, but saying, you know, whenever they come to office, it does not happen. In an instance like this, if this legislation has been in place for a while and there's some semblance of it working, why would it be repealed?
If it is working, you can change your mind if you appreciate that it's been working. What I'm just saying is that that is a given. There are things that this administration campaigned that it would do, and it has done the opposite since it's come into power. So that is a normal political experience. That's not abnormal.
But we have to...
But it would be irresponsible for an organization which takes a particular position at a particular time that might cause a problem to people who act on the current situation that they're faced with, not to warn them that that is not likely to be continued. So that you know, you wouldn't be able to blame that particular organization of having ambushed you.
Mr. Johnson, as we had to wrap up, a lot of times, and you said it at the beginning of the show, government doesn't do a very good job in public relations and in trying to espouse what it is it's attempting to do. Do you accept that maybe in this instance not enough information was given out or not enough consultation took place, or there was not enough good PR about what it is that you were trying to do?
In certain instances, I can agree with that, but we have to, what we have to do is build capacity in civil society. The opposition has to be much more proactive as a Majesty's opposition. If I give you a copy of the bill, don't come to me a month later and say, wait, hold on. I need more time to go. I need to view this. You haven't even viewed it. When you have a private entity who are using their couple dollars can come back to me and give me all of their proposed changes to bills. And when we are saying publicly to persons, and there's a reason why I say that the Proceeds of Crime bill, and I've been saying it for a while now, and how you can get it. Listen, this is our Bahamas. We have to be proactive about our things. Because let me tell you what's happening. There are certain other people who are extremely proactive when it comes to land and certain different things. And they're trying to get it. And so the government has a duty, and what we have done for the first time in the history of the Bahamas, public consultation with civil society. And that's because of international reports. It improves governments. It takes care of the less fortunate in the community, thereby securing the rights even of the powerful and the rich. And so when we lay bills, you can get them for free. Go to your churches, go to your schools, discuss them. When we lay them, listen, when we lay them, the Progressive Liberal Party has them. Go to your youth organizations. But when the bell is ring in Parliament, we encourage objective criticism. And we ask for your advice. We've taken on Ms. Ingram and everything that everybody else has said. But when the bell is ring, come out hitting. That's what we're going to say to the opposition.
Sir, thank you so very much. Gentlemen, I thank both of you for coming on this evening and discussing this. I hope that our discussion advances the work of our country, not just political parties, but certainly so that at the end of the day we all benefit from it. Thank you very much for coming on this evening and providing such great insight. We appreciate you stopping by tonight. We hope that you have enjoyed our show tonight. Special thanks to the Honourable Ellsworth Johnson, who, by the way, is celebrating his birthday today. Thank you. So thank you for taking time out. If we had known, we'd had a big party and for you. But thank you.
May I say hello to my mother? She was admitted to the hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. I hope she gets well soon.
Yes, and her boy is celebrating his birthday. God bless you, Mommy. Love you.
Make sure you go and spend some time with her today, definitely. Mr. Damien Gomez, thank you for coming as well.
Thank you for
Appreciate
inviting
it.
me.
Yes, my producer, technical staff, and of course, all of you in our audience for watching. Be sure and join us next time on The Record, same time, same place. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Thanks again.